from the heart of where innovation, money, and power collide. In Silicon Valley and beyond, this is Bloomberg Technology with Emily Chang.
I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up in the next hour, a reality check for Apple's mixed reality headset, now facing a new delay. What this means for the iPhone maker's push into the metaverse. Plus, the largest crypto fund to date, crypto exchange FTX, is launching a $2 billion venture fund. Our conversation with the person in charge of putting all that cash to work this hour. And the internet's latest obsession, Wordle, how a game invented in 2018 is suddenly going viral. We'll get to all of that in a moment, but first let's get a look at the markets. Volatility was the buzzword of the day. Our Ed Ludlow here with the latest. Ed,
Wordle is still the buzzword of any day at the moment, but volatility, it's been a jittery week in financial markets, right? Volatility, choppy trading, call it what you will. Investors taking on board rising yields, the outlook for rates, inflation, the Omicron variant. But we ended positively Friday, right? We saw this rebound in stocks late in Friday's session, particularly in tech stocks. You see that outperformance in the NASDAQ 100, closing up 0.8%, while the S&P 500 is basically flat. Outperformance, particularly in mega caps, the NYSE FANG Plus index up more than 1%. And Bitcoin really moving in the same way, seeing kind of a rebound as people kind of became more confident buying into equities on Friday. It's that time of the week, Emily, where I get to ask my favorite question. Of course, you know what it is. What is Bitcoin? Come with me into my Bloomberg terminal. Let's think about this for just a moment, right? Because we've been talking about Bitcoin. Is it an inflation hedge? Is it a risk asset like an equity? Is it a commodity? Well, what you see on the screen in the right-hand side is the correlation between Bitcoin and tech stocks, the NASDAQ 100 specifically. It's a reading of 0.4. 1 means a perfect correlation. They're moving in lockstep. -1, they're moving in opposite directions. So at 0.4, we see in that chart throughout 2020, 2021, that correlation's been high, but it's been creeping up after dropping off at the beginning of this year. They're moving in lockstep. And it has a lot of people asking again, what is Bitcoin? Is it an inflation hedge? Because it seems to be behaving very much like a risk asset, like equity. It's not going to go away, the question. We'll keep at it. Two big corporate stories you're going to talk about in a moment with Mark Scoop Dog Gurman. But Apple closing up 0.5%, 0.5%. But it did drop on news, according to sources, that the AR/VR headset is delayed due to some specific issues. Big news for that company. And Meta, according to sources, being looked at, particularly Oculus, by the FTC and antitrust practices in that virtual reality business, Emily.
All right, Ed, thanks much. Let's get to that Meta news. The FTC and multiple states are investigating Meta's virtual reality unit Oculus over potential anti-competitive practices. Our Mark Scoot Dog Gurman here with the details. Mark, look, what exactly is the FTC interested in? What did Meta potentially do wrong here?
The FTC wants to know a few things. They want to know how Meta is able to sell their headset for $299, which undercuts the price of many competitors from HTC and other providers. They want to know if their App Store practices are stifling competition. They want to know how Meta, through Oculus, is hurting third-party virtual reality developers. So they've been talking to several developers over the past few months or so. This is both the U.S. Federal Trade Commission and states, including New York, Tennessee, and North Carolina. And I think this is going to be a long-running investigation. And yet it's yet another time that government officials are looking into Meta, and other technology companies, obviously like Apple and Google and Amazon, are also under lots of scrutiny.
Absolutely. Just another headache for Meta. I do want to move on to Apple and your story that its AR/VR headset, which we've been long anticipating, in part because of your reporting, could be delayed. What did you know?
This might actually be yet another headache for Meta, because based on what we've been hearing, the capabilities of this first mixed reality headset from Apple are going to be pretty hot and hard for Facebook to compete with its first mixed reality headset next year. But speaking of the news, we're hearing that there is probably going to be a few-month delay at minimum for Apple's headset. That's because of development challenges stemming from the device overheating, from software, and from camera technology. What Apple's trying to do is they're trying to cram in processors that you normally get in a MacBook Pro or a very high-end desktop computer into a headset that you wear on your face that doesn't need to be plugged in. And controlling the thermal system and overheating and the battery for that is a very, tricky thing to do. And so that's what Apple has been grappling with. I still think they're going to introduce the headset either late in 2022 or sometime early in 2023, and then release it more widely in 2023.
How important is this new headset going to be to Apple's product lineup?
Yeah, this is going to be in the early innings. It's not going to sell that much. Apple has projected selling 1 unit per day per retail store. From what we're told from supply chain partners, there's forecasts of selling between 7 and 10 million units for the first year on sale. And then from there, they're only going to continue to build up momentum with follow-up models, augmented reality, glasses further down the road, right? So there is a long roadmap ahead for the AR and VR product line, and you're going to see them expand on it and build on it, just like they've built upon the iPad, the iPod, well before that, the iPhone, and the Apple Watch, and the AirPods more recently.
All right, Mark Gurman, thanks so much for that update. I want to talk a little bit more about Apple now with Dan Ives of Wedbush Securities. Dan, what's your take on Mark's report that this headset, which could potentially be really important, but not, perhaps the biggest sales, at least not right away, could be delayed?
Look, I mean, there's a lot of complexity in terms of building out what we'll define as Apple Glass. We believe this is something that they want to introduce potentially in the summer and ultimately start to sell in the fall, call late fall. There are a lot of technology hurdles. They want to make sure they get this right. And we still think the timetable is to have this ready for holiday season. Right? And the street sort of use this as just the first start of what could be a broader growth initiative here. And we think that this could add about $20 per share to the stock once they officially launch it.
We've got earnings coming up amidst a broader tech sell-off, and Apple has not been immune. What are you expecting?
I think for Apple, it's a tale of two cities because underlying demand is outstripping supply by about 12 to 14 million units. So I think what we're going to see is a strong earnings that probably beats the street by about 5% coming out of the gate. They'll be cautious in terms of the supply chain, but ultimately I think they up guidance, going into the next year, despite some of those supply chain issues. I think services right now could be on a run rate about 80 billion for the year. And then you look what's happened on iPhone. I think that's something that continues to track ahead of the street. That's why, despite all the Fed news, despite all the macro worries, I think when fundamentals come for Apple, that's a positive catalyst in our opinion. I think sends the stock back above the 3 trillion market cap.
What's your outlook for big tech equities over the course of the year, given news or no news from the Fed?
Look, I think right now you're in a vacuum of news where until fundamentals come in terms of earnings, Street's going to have that risk off. I continue to view it as cloud and chips are going to lead us higher. I think fundamentally the digital transformation that we're seeing is actually accelerating into the next year, not decelerating, because we think about $1 trillion is going to be spent in the cloud in the next 4 years. That's what we're focused on. So some of the froth will get taken out of the market. It's clearly a bit of a white knuckle period for tech. But I think we look back on this time a year from now, and this was an opportunity where it's our view that we're still in the middle innings of this tech bull rally.
Meantime, I want to turn to Tesla, where we're still seeing demand outstrip supply. At what point does supply meet demand, and how?
Well, Austin's so important. We think by next week, Tesla's basically going to be ready to start producing Model Y cars in Austin, which is extremely important to the broader story because you combine what's happened in Austin plus Berlin, we think launches sometime in February, and China, there'll be about 2 million unit capacity by the end of the year. So they're about double capacity. And right now, Tesla doesn't have a demand issue, it's a supply issue. I think we're going to see with Tesla, they're going to start really seeing acceleration out of China and Europe. And there was some noise with the Cybertruck moving to 2023. That's a positive thing because in my view, it's all right now about Model Y and Model 3. Cybertruck is a 2023 story, which is very in line with where GM, Ford, and others are.
I do want to ask a quick question about Meta because it does seem heading into the year. Of course, they just got a little bit of bad news with the FTC and that Oculus investigation. But I wonder if you think the name change and the at least outward pivot seems to have worked in terms of tamping down the bad press.
I mean, it's going to go in the genius PR Hall of Fame in terms of that name change. Now, of course, strategically, they're focused on the metaverse, but everyone knows, I mean, their core monetization is social media monetization on the advertising front. But it is something where they were going through a lot of black eye situations that taken some of the heat off them. But now it's about them executing, and that's what the street's going to be focused on. But the regulatory environment for big tech, they're going to be spending a lot of time either in person or virtually in the 202 area code.
All right, and yet that litigation piling up. Dan Ives of Wedbush, always good to have you on the show. Thank you for stopping by. Well, Netflix says it plans to spend more on programming at a price. The streaming service announcing it's raised the price of its monthly subscription packages in the U.S. The changes posted on the Netflix website stating the basic plan, which allows just one user at a time, will go up by $1, while the premium service will get a $2 boost. Coming up, the largest employer so far to stop President Biden's vaccination or test mandate. Could General Electric's decision sway other employers? That is next. This is Bloomberg.
I think that 2022 may be the year that the pandemic enters an endemic phase, but it really depends on what happens and the decisions that are made across the world. And so that are encouraging in some ways, but I think that we have to stay very vigilant.
Moderna co-founder Noubar Afeyan sharing his view that the COVID-19 pandemic could ultimately become endemic, similar to what we see with the flu. He added that Moderna's booster shot, specifically tweaked to tackle Omicron, could be ready to start trials within weeks. This as the Supreme Court blocked the Biden administration's vaccine or test mandate for large employers. General Electric announced Friday it is suspending implementation of that mandate, the largest employer yet to do so. Bloomberg Government's Alex Ruoff with us now. So, Alex, the big question is how many other employers are going to follow suit?
Yeah, that is a big question. There's a big disparity across the country on this now. Now that the federal mandate, has been blocked by the courts, it's kind of up to where these companies are located. About 13 states prohibit vaccine mandates of kind of any kind. While about 20 some have some type of mandate of their own for maybe state employees or healthcare workers. So, like a lot of things, when the federal solution, is blocked, it kind of ends up a big hodgepodge across the country. So it's really going to depend on where you live.
Does the administration have a next move legally with these mandates?
Well, that's pretty complicated. OSHA, which started the large employment rule, has other tools in its tool belt. But, the Biden administration, at the beginning of the of Biden's term, he did not, he said he didn't want to do mandates. He thought, as the vaccines rolled out, there was a lot of, if you remember, there was a period of time where people were getting baseball tickets and, money and bonuses and free beer for vaccines. And that really topped out its effectiveness, and then they kind of had to switch to mandates, to coercion at this point. But yeah, the amount of tools in the federal toolbox is very limited in that regard. In terms of making mandates, some of these are still around. The healthcare, the one for doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, was upheld by the court, and there's others in place. But yeah, I think they're really limited in what they can do next to really get people to get vaccinated.
Exactly. What else can they do to get people vaccinated or beat back the virus? I mean, 500 million or even a billion rapid tests is nice, but it's only a snapshot of a moment in time and, more than 300 million Americans.
Yeah, that is the big, it looks like the amount of, the percentage of the U.S. that's been vaccinated is kind of holding steady. It's a little bit over 60%. They've really been trying to crack that kind of, 3/4 of the country or 2/3 of the country to get vaccinated. And it's really put, they've slowed a lot in terms of the percentage. And there are a lot of questions about how you fulfill this. There's a lot of expectation that as this becomes endemic, as a year or so passes by, we're probably not, there's expectation that we're not going to see a big change here. Where we are, maybe, where we are as a country for at least the next year or so.
Wow. All right, Bloomberg Government's Alex Ruoff. We shall see what the year holds. Coming up, the future of SPACs. After 2021 being a record year for SPAC deals, where are we headed in 2022? We'll hear from a new SPAC CFO directly next. This is Bloomberg. Apologies for getting this song stuck in your head, but Baby Shark just hit a major milestone on YouTube. It has now been viewed more than 10 billion times. It already was the most viewed video on YouTube of all time. That record set back in November of 2020, but it is now the only video ever to reach 10 billion views. And we're all going to be singing it now all night long. Well, let's talk SPACs and what the market looks like for this year. Joining us to talk about that and more, Claudia Gast, CFO of the Global Technology Acquisition Corp, a newly formed SPAC that intends to focus on tech companies and financial tech. So, Claudia, obviously there was a big SPAC frenzy, then they pulled back a bit. Some have been doing much better than others. Why take the SPAC route?
Thanks, Emily, for having me. It's great to be here. Like you mentioned, 2021 was an exciting year. 613 SPACs went to market, and we have already 4 that priced last week, and we have 270 in the pipeline. So it's shaping up to be an exciting year. We've been long-term investors, operators, and entrepreneurs, and we've backed more than 1,000 entrepreneurs and 600 companies. And so this was a natural step to us to go from the VC and the hedge fund background to go into the SPAC market, into an opportunity to bring good private companies into the public market and support them through the journey with our team.
What do you plan to buy?
That's a great question. We've been having late last year great conversations, and our main focus is marketplaces, fintech, and SaaS. This is truly where our expertise lays, and those are the kind of companies that we're talking to right now. And as you mentioned, some of the market, we had very high valuations about a year ago last year. The market kind of softened up in Q2 and Q3, and December alone last year we saw 25 mergers completed. So we're coming from a strong end of the year and very excited about the beginning of this year. What we're seeing is that with the rising interest, the valuations being adjusted as a result of that, the SPAC vehicle, it becoming a very good tool for entrepreneurs to look for some certainty as they come to the public market.
The SEC has been pretty active looking into SPACs and reverse mergers, and we're about to hit rate liftoff cycle. Do you wish you'd done this sooner?
No, look, we actually did it at the right time. We navigated through the process, worked collectively through the SEC as the different steps came in. And it is true that there's 580 SPACs looking for opportunities, but all 2022, the great competitor was cash and cash availability. And for large public corporations, M&A, it's been competitive against private equities as well, and now against SPACs. So really cash is through the truly competitor. And so it doesn't really make a difference for us in terms of finding a good company to bring to market.
Investors have embraced Tesla as the biggest car maker by market value. Ford also soaring. And then you've got some of these other new entrants that did go public via SPAC, Lordstown, Nikola, that have little in terms of revenue. Do you think or worry that we could be in the process of a bubble bursting?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at other companies like, the Lucid that was brought in by Churchill, it is true that there is some companies like Lordstown that maybe will be, struggling and bringing sort of the average down. But it is a matter of, do we have the right asset? If I think about in general for SPACs, what's the key, for a SPAC to be successful is that number one, find the right target, have the right team, and have the right operating team behind it to be able to, to continue the journey of a public company. So it really depends of the asset you truly bring to market.
So what's your general outlook for the SPAC market? Does this continue to be a more niche route of going public? Does it become more popular or not?
We see the SPAC, call it, investment vehicle as a good alternative for, to go public together with direct listing and IPO. And what we expect to see is a couple of things. I think in 2022 and 2023, towards the end of 2022 and early 2023, we might see some of the SPACs coming to term. In average over the past, let's say, call it 5 years, there's been about 5% of SPACs that had to wind down. I think in the coming years or two, we're going to see the same, just with a larger volume. At the same time, there is an opportunity for for SPACs to find the right match, and so we do believe it's going to continue to be a prominent vehicle, but we expect to see less of new time issuers and more of sort of repeated issuers. So we think the market sort of is going to bifurcate in that sense.
Any sectors you're staying away from deliberately?
Well, specifically, we've stayed away in the past from healthcare because that's an area that hasn't been our space. Truly, our focus is with marketplaces, fintech and SaaS. And some of us see a marketplace, everywhere. So it really depends on how you look at it. But generally, those are the key areas where we want to focus.
All right. Claudia Gast, CFO of the Global Technology Acquisition Corp. We'll be watching to see the next move you make. Thank you. Coming up, we'll be joined by FTX's Amy Wu, who is leading the exchange's new $2 billion fund to invest in crypto startups and more. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. Crypto exchange FTX is launching a $2 billion venture fund, one of the largest to date, to tap into the crypto market startups and beyond. I want to bring in Amy Wu to talk more about this. She joined FTX from Lightspeed Ventures, where she led investments in gaming, crypto, and other startups, and was brought in to lead FTX's new funds. Amy, thanks so much for joining us. $2 billion is a big number. Where do you plan to spend it?
Well, we are super excited to be, one of the new strategic funds to deploy capital into the broader crypto and Web3 ecosystem. We believe that we're still pretty early in the market, and you can, define by number of users. We're still at, I would say, less than half a billion users trading crypto globally, and fewer than actually 20 million people trading in DeFi. So we're still very early, hundreds of millions of users to be onboarded, and we want to help the ecosystem get there.
Now, all of this money, as I understand it, came from Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder and CEO, and FTX. Normally, when you raise a fund, it's from a lot of other investors who you then have to answer to. How does the structure of this make things different for you, having come from a traditional venture fund, given that you don't have to answer to all of these LPs?
Well, the exciting thing is that, we have the size of fund to be able to write a very large range of checks. So anything from $100,000 to $500 million checks, we are able to write, and also in multi-stage companies, and also without outside partners and LPs, we're just able to move really fast and really focus on providing value that is sort of our expertise and resources across FTX's global ecosystem of partners, and really focus on the founding team.
Meantime, there's so much talk and concern, especially from newer investors, about the direction of the crypto market, concerns about a crypto winter, a death cross coming. We just had John Wu, the head of Ava Labs, who thinks a golden cross is ahead instead. Where do you think the market is going to move ahead, and how does that influence where and how you place your bets?
Well, I think there's, trading crypto, and then there's making investments in the ecosystem. I don't think anybody can really predict what the market is going on a short-term basis, and perhaps even medium-term basis. But, I think, we certainly are super bullish about the long-term trajectory of blockchain technology adoption. And so, with this fund, we have a long-term, and by that I mean, years, measured in years and decades, view into the technology being adopted cross categories. So, Web3, consumer, gaming, infrastructure, software, software, healthcare, and other categories.
Meantime, crypto funds seem to be everywhere. There's Paradigm, there's Coinbase launching their own fund, Katie Hahn from Andreessen Horowitz launching her own fund. Andreessen Horowitz, of course, has its own crypto fund. Are all of these funds going to be chasing the same names? And if so, how do you convince various startups and founders that your money is the money they should take?
Yeah, so I think you're seeing a lot of different types of investors coming into the crypto market because, it is a fairly nascent space, and it reflects the size of opportunity and also the number of developers and founding teams in this category. So there's a lot of great teams to back. And in terms of why they should go with FTX Ventures, I would say, we're launching with 8 people on the team, and it's a team of both investors and also engineers. And, everybody has had a significant amount of time and expertise in the space. And so our objectives with the fund is we want to be closer. We want to be really hands-on with teams and make fewer investments, but go a lot deeper in our value add process.
You're also across the gaming vertical, and I'm curious, how do you find the next Axie Infinity that's going to take this world by storm?
Yeah, gaming is a really exciting category for us, for both the venture side and also FTX more broadly. It is the largest, entertainment category in the world. It's about $200 billion per year industry in content alone. And also, gamers historically have valued in-game digital assets. You could say that they really pioneered the usage and value of that. And it's a pretty natural extension to think that they will want to own the assets as well. There's some controversy around, I think a lot of gamers get wrapping their minds around the concept of NFTs, but we're super bullish around it. And in terms of how to find these gaming studios, what we're looking for are teams that are both very experienced in making games and have had experience doing so, and also have an idea of innovative ways to adopt NFT and blockchain tech.
So what's next? Obviously, there's a lot of money chasing a lot of potential deals, but there's a lot of regulatory uncertainty. Is there anything you're going to stay away from? What sort of crypto projects out there don't have the right stuff?
It's a nuanced and question, Emily. I would say that this year, we're always very closely looking at and understanding the regulatory environment. And that is, the set of rules in the US, and that is still emerging and also different across jurisdictions. So I would say in the context of what's developing, we're going to be looking at teams that that also respects that that it's important to be compliant to regulatory and frameworks. And it's also an area that we can also add value, since on the exchange side, we have so much expertise into that.
All right. Amy Wu, head of ventures and commercial at FTX. Thank you for joining us. We'll be watching your next move. Coming up, the Earth keeps setting records as global temperatures continue to rise. But my next guest is trying to do his part to stop it, or as he calls it, turn buildings into Teslas, one building at a time. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Well, these last 8 years have been the hottest on record. 2021 ranked as the 6th hottest year, according to analysis by NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. As the globe continues to warm, more companies are doing their part, or trying to stop it. My next guest has been working for a decade now to try green America's cities by modernizing heating and cooling systems to make buildings more energy efficient. Joining me now, Danell Bayard. He is the CEO of Block Power. And Danell, the way you put it is you're trying to turn buildings into Teslas. How exactly does the technology work?
Absolutely. So buildings right now burn fossil fuels for heating, for cooling, for hot water. Just like Tesla has taken the fossil fuel engine out of vehicles and replaced it with an all-electric engine, we can now take that fossil fuel heating, cooling, and hot water equipment out of buildings and replace it with 100% electric, clean, green, smart hardware and equipment that uses electricity to provide heating, cooling, and hot water. So we can totally electrify and decarbonize buildings.
Talk to us about the business model. You just raised $30 million in new funding. How do you plan to spend that money and make this a sustainable proposition for homeowners?
Well, we're going to go building to building across America. There's 125 million buildings or around that across the country, and we need to decarbonize all of those buildings because buildings represent about 30% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. And so we know we have to decarbonize buildings and move them from fossil fuels to electricity in order to reach our climate goals. And so Block Power, we use machine learning, statistical modeling, the latest and greatest tech from Silicon Valley. We borrow money from Wall Street. We purchase the clean energy equipment. We loan it or lease the equipment to building owners so that they can afford it. We lease it to them over time. We save each and every building owner money, and they repay us out of the savings that are generated because our systems make buildings more efficient and more profitable. They generate savings so that building owners can repay us for upgrading to clean energy systems.
You're based in Brooklyn, and I have to ask about that devastating fire that killed 17 people. The thought was that a space heater was left on for days, perhaps because there wasn't enough heat to heat the entire building. Could your work help eliminate the need for this supplemental heat that we know can cause fires?
That building fire was a terrible, terrible tragedy, and our heart goes out to everyone who was impacted. The building actually had a bunch of complaints. A lot of tenants and residents called the government to complain about a lack of heat, and that's why there was that need for supplemental heat. But unfortunately, in buildings across the Bronx and buildings across America, the energy systems are inefficient, they're old, they're outdated, they're unhealthy. And in too many buildings, energy systems are death traps. They're unhealthy, they're dangerous, and you will see the kind of dangerous and unhealthy impacts as we see here. I grew up in a building like this in a low-income community back in Brooklyn and Bed-Stuy when it was a really low-income community in the 80s. We didn't have a functioning heating system at all. And we would heat our apartment by turning on the oven and open up the oven door and letting the heat from the oven heat up our apartment. And then we'd open up the windows to release carbon monoxide and all the toxins that were coming out of the oven. And so in far too many buildings across America, there's millions and millions of Americans who have old, antiquated, inefficient systems, and those systems are dangerous. We think that by upgrading these buildings to modern technology, it's 2022. We shouldn't be burning oil and gas in basements and using space heaters to heat buildings. We can use modern, cutting-edge, cloud-connected, high-efficiency electric devices to green all of America's buildings.
You also teamed up with the city of New York to create more than 1,000 jobs in green energy, hiring at-risk workers. What does that mean? And talk to us about how this initiative will work. Yeah,
so as part of the COVID recovery and COVID response, the White House allowed cities to use COVID response dollars to actually train and hire folks from high crime communities to do green construction work, to be trained, to be employed, to go building to building, to install internet antenna to help close the digital divide so that children could learn remotely, to install solar panels, as we're doing on a project in Staten Island today, to decarbonize the building's heating and cooling systems, as we've been talking about. And so we've created this civilian climate corps by hiring 500 adults from the highest crime communities in New York City. So, in the Bronx and Harlem and Jamaica, Queens and Brownsville, Brooklyn, we hire these folks, we train them to go building to building and do green construction upgrades that hopefully will help to prevent fires and other kinds of dangerous outcomes like the building in the Bronx.
Okay. Danelle Baird, CEO of Block Power, fascinating work you're doing. We'll continue to track your progress. Coming up, watch out, Adele. Encanto is here for the #1 spot. Disney's newest film has overthrown the pop star for #1 album on the Billboard 200. We've got all the deets. And Wordle, it is going viral. We'll decrypt how it came to be the phenomenon it is today and what people are saying about it on the internets. This is Bloomberg.
Many years ago, this candle blessed our family with a miracle. Our house, our casita.
There's no denying Disney's Encanto is a hit, but not only in the box office, it's having a second life on music and video streaming services. The soundtrack to the film becoming the #1 album in the U.S. this week on the Billboard 200, bumping Adele's 30 from the top spot. Our Chris Palmieri joins us now with more. So Disney has a hit on its hands, huh, Chris?
Yeah, and it's hard to say whether this is just one of those pandemic things or whether it's really a glimpse of the future of the entertainment business, because this came out on Thanksgiving. It did okay. Obviously, parents reluctant to, take their kids to the theaters. Gets released a month later on Disney Plus, and, coinciding with the Omicron surge, and starts to really take off. People are posting videos on TikTok. The song We Don't Talk About Bruno is a big hit, goes to #1, as you mentioned, and it really just, kids are watching it again and again at home, and it just becomes one of those phenomena.
So talk to us about the potential life this could have. Obviously, whenever Disney has a hit like this, there's obviously ongoing, franchising, merchandising, theme park opportunities. Does Encanto get to that level?
Certainly, they already had characters at the theme park, and they'll probably build on that. The consumer product side of this, we looked into that a little bit. It's doing okay. It's not really, doesn't have a breakthrough toy like that Frozen dress from a few years ago. But this really is also about the streaming business, and Disney. All of these folks need to put up fresh movies and TV shows on their streaming platforms. And this keeps people engaged with Disney Plus, which is so critical to the company's future. And then you wonder in the future if, there used to be so much focus on releasing a movie in that first big weekend in theaters, if maybe there won't be more attention paid to the online release of a movie.
Now, Rich Greenfield of Lightshed has been pretty bearish on Disney Plus, super bullish on Netflix, doesn't think Disney has the content to keep new subscribers coming to Disney Plus. What else does Disney have on tap?
Well, they promised this huge increase in spending next year, $30 billion, and this year, I'm sorry. And so, there's a lot of money, a lot of shows. We're going to see big movies this year, Avatar 2, for example, next Black Panther. There's going to be a lot coming out, assuming it doesn't all get interrupted, by COVID and having to, reschedule these shoots.
All right. Well, we'll be watching to see more of those hits keep coming. Bloomberg's Chris Palmieri, thanks for that update. Well, It's a simple word game that has the entire internet going crazy. Wordle. It has been trending the whole week as people try to guess the game's 5-letter word in 6 tries every day. Only one word puzzle a day, and it's the same word for everyone. As you can see here, don't worry, no spoilers, this isn't today's word, but after each guess, the tiles change colors to show which letters are not in the word in gray, which letters are in the word but in the wrong position in yellow, and which ones are correctly in the word and in the right position in green. This is our going viral of the week. Gotta say, our Ed Ludlow here to tell us more. And Ed, we Wordle dueled today. I think it was your first time.
It was my first
right?
time. Yeah, it was my first time, and it was frustrating because I wasn't as good at it as I thought I'd be. And, you know, I've been looking into Wordle. This is what's so strange about things that go viral, things that trend, like Chris was just talking about with Encanto, released in Thanksgiving, popular now. Wordle was brought out in October, but now it's a big focus for everyone online. All of our colleagues, big names out there on Twitter, playing with it, and it's addicting. Of course it is, but because it's only available once a day. Once a day.
Once a day. It was my second time, and I believe we have, there's yours. There's your score. The thing that's so great about this is you can tweet your score. I got mine in 4 tries. Not bad. I'm going to try to improve upon that too. But talk to us about why this suddenly became so popular. It started in 2018, but it's only now that, you know, Jimmy Fallon and other celebrities are tweeting about it.
Yeah, so it was founded by a guy called Josh Wardle, a developer, used to work at Reddit. It started as something that he would play with his partner, just the two of them, right? He has a background in programming, and he actually had a previous attempt, you know, a few years back, making it public. It didn't go very well. And you know, he's been talking to the media a lot this week. He has become a star himself. You know, Josh Wardle, the founder of this thing, talking about the beauty of it is its limitations, right? No push notifications. It's not in your face. It's not like the other apps on my iPhone where I'm getting hit 5 times a day, like, check me out, come back to me, play with me. You know, it's once a day, and it's that scarcity or restriction which he says is what's driving people towards it. You know, it's infuriating. You know, if you do badly on your first go, like I did, then you want to go again straight away, but you can't. You got to wait until the next morning.
The Wordle memes are off the hook. I gotta say, have been entertained by them all day long. And as you say, just one a day, and as soon as you're finished with it, you want the next one, or you want to play the ones that came before, and they're gone. The other thing that's happening is people are mistaking Wordle in the App Store for other similarly named games, and Apple has a big, confusing problem on its hand.
I mean, that's just kudos to Wordle, right? That's just a hat tip to how good the thing is that copycats rose up the charts on the App Store, had to be removed. It's just astonishing. I mean, the game itself, it's become a cultural icon in a week. You know, people challenging themselves with what is basically a spelling bee, right? You know, they were talking, Josh Wardle's told the press about how he used to love the New York Times spelling bee, for example. That's what got him into this. You know, I think the Scrabble dictionary only has like 9,000 5-letter words anyway, but it's something that's become so widespread, you know. And when I was talking about October, you know, there was like a dozen people each day playing in the early days of November, maybe 90 in early November. There are hundreds of thousands playing each day now, and you can see how quickly it's taken off. Is it a pandemic thing, Em? I don't know. Like, it's so basic. It's a daily 3-minute exercise, or 1 minute if you're really good. You can see it staying, right? You can see it hanging around.
I'm a word game buff, and I think I'd play it anyway. There's also this new thing, Absurdle, which is a spin-off, and it basically tries to stay ahead of you, keep you at bay, changing its secret word for as many times as possible, but still remaining consistent to the information it's given so far. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm feeling good about my chances.
Again, it's just homage to the success of Wordle. Just one really quick thing, Em. You know, in an episode of the show where we're talking about AR and VR headsets, cutting-edge technology that we're desperate to get our hands on, how funny is it that we're actually hung up on a 3-minute game, basic code online, and all you can do is have one single try at it? Amazing.
No apps, no push notifications, just a simple word game. Love it. All right. Thanks, Ed. And thank you all for watching. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Stay with Bloomberg. My colleague David Weston coming up next with Wall Street Week. I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Have a wonderful weekend.